Howdy, folks. Today, really want to discuss writing the literature review and what you need to know as you move forward. Give you some examples of text and let you read through it and kind of understand the expectations here. So, just to start out, the introduction of your lit review, that's similar to the proposal that you wrote, is going to contain an overview of the variables that you're discussing and kind of where you're going, what your paper hopes to achieve. The significance, remember we talked about theoretical, social, personal significance. And most of you, if you could really work on trying to make that a little bit more smoothly integrated as opposed to saying the theoretical significance is. And then finally, a roadmap or a preview statement that kind of guides us through what the paper will look like. So here you see an example of an introduction and rationale for the study. I'll give you a couple of seconds to read over this, but I did want to make sure and note that there are citations in your introduction and your rationale. A lot of you wrote your proposals without citations, and that's okay, but we don't ever want to make claims in a research paper without them being a function of the hypothesis or what we're looking to study, or without some sort of citation to support our claims. If you're doing a critical piece, then you're in kind of a different area, and so the claims that you're making, you have to back up through good argumentation, but that's also going to be supported by existing journal articles and research. This continues on the next slide. The rationale piece does, but as you can see, the introduction is just kind of introducing you to what is relationship maintenance, and the rationale starts to build by saying, here's where we generally see relationship maintenance studied, and you can kind of sense the but or the however coming, and we'll see that on the next slide. And again, we see the however, because romantic partners are also report using negative behaviors as an additional way to maintain relationships. We're going to undertake this study. Okay, so it's a continuation of the why. What's the purpose? What does this contribute? That's the significance piece. And the roadmap here is an explicit preview of where the paper is going, what the goals are, and then you see at the very end down here at the bottom a continuation of the rationale or the significance. And so we're actually getting what we're going to learn as a result of this study. So I'll give you a couple seconds to read through this. Our previous slide would conclude what would be your introduction or your proposal piece that goes right at the beginning of your literature review. And then we move into what we kind of think of in the work that you've been preparing for with your annotations as the literature review. There are 3 steps in a literature review. A summary or synthesis is a better word there of existing research. Linkage, which links what is out there, so the literature review that you do, with what you're trying to discover, explain, or describe in your study, and the linkage builds to a research question or hypothesis. So oftentimes we have 2 or 3 variables, and we will walk through with subheadings, variable number 1, and we'll do a literature review on variable number 1. And then we'll have variable number 2, and we'll do a literature review on variable number 2. But then, before we ask our hypothesis, we need a linkage paragraph that links or gives the relationship between the 2 variables that you are predicting in your paper. And that paragraph serves to justify the hypothesis or research question that's coming. And we'll see an example of this. Some best practices for literature reviews, and I really want to draw your attention to the middle 3. We obviously, starting off with the top one and the bottom one, we want to be comprehensive, meaning we don't want to leave out a large portion of the existing literature on a variable or phenomenon that we're studying. And the studies that we're synthesizing have been conducted already, and so we always want to use past tense in the literature review. But really the main thing, and students struggle greatly with this, is that we're not just summarizing one article in a couple paragraphs and then moving on to another article to summarize it in a couple paragraphs. What you're actually doing is synthesizing existing research or summarizing existing research on a specific variable, not summarizing an article. Your annotations summarize an article. And the idea behind those is you are going to use the annotations to seamlessly synthesize the existing information that's out there about a specific variable so that you can talk about that variable and use the research that you found as supporting material. So you probably shouldn't ever really write a paragraph without at least 2 citations in it. You don't want to overly depend on one research article. And this is the piece that students struggle with the most, and this is the piece that I certainly will probably give the most feedback on in your literature reviews. Within each of your variables in your literature review, you use what's called an inverted pyramid. All right, and so each variable has its own inverted pyramid. And we start broad and we get specific. We start to narrow down the discussion of that variable. So the first thing that we do is provide a conceptual definition of the variable, what context it's been studied in. Broad empirical application is existing research about the variable that you're studying in a variety of contexts linked to a variety of things that aren't necessarily the same that you're studying. So if I am studying teacher immediacy behaviors in online classes, I'm going to talk about immediacy as a variable, and I'm going to talk about immediacy generally. So what else is it linked to? Not specific to online classes, and maybe not specific to anything that I'm studying necessarily, but just to give an overview of that specific variable and what else it is related to in the communication discipline. And then at the very end of each variable, you talk about the specific application that exists for the argument that you're trying to make. So I might look up previous research on teacher immediacy in the online environment, and that's where I would put that specific set of research studies or literature review piece at the very end, the specific stuff that relates to what I'm studying. So the first thing that we do within any variable, and remember, literature reviews tend to be broken down by variables, and you use little subheadings to talk about variables. The first thing that we want to do is conceptually define them. And so you have 2 examples here of conceptual definitions. And remember, these are not how you're going to measure it. They're theoretical definitions from research on the variable. So maintenance, here they're using Dindia and Canary's 1993 article that says relationship maintenance are designed to keep a relationship in existence. That's the conceptual definition. And then you see below jealousy induction, a conceptual definition for jealousy induction. And again, you see the citation there. So 2 examples of conceptual definitions. Here again, we have some conceptual definitions, but we also have some empirical application. So the first one there, we see Eros and agape love styles typically foster relationship satisfaction, the tendency to fall in love, and relational intensification. Do you think that's a conceptual definition or empirical application? If you said empirical application, you're correct. What we're doing is basically connecting love styles to other communication variables. The second one, however, the ludus love style typically produces lower quality romantic relationships characterized by dissatisfaction, cheating, and defeatist attitudes. Do you think that's a conceptual definition or empirical application? If you said empirical application, you're correct. The third one, mania love style produces troubled relationships plagued by depression, self-esteem problems, and of relationship endurance tests. Empirical application as well. And the same for the last one. So here we have linking the variable that we're talking about, love styles, with other communication outcomes from previous research. And here we start to see the transition from specific application to linkage, linking multiple variables together. So previous research informs this contention as jealousy induction may be used as a mate retention tactic. Remember, we were talking about negative maintenance behaviors. Jealousy induction would be a negative maintenance behavior. Destructive conflict beliefs are associated with self-focused and partner-focused relationship goals. Spying and surveillance may serve as a method of coping with relational uncertainty. So what we're building to here is the fact that negative maintenance has an impact on some other variables that we're looking at. And so what we're going to see next is the actual linkage. This is starting to build the case, but the case actually isn't built yet. What we basically need here is a therefore. And we kind of get that therefore here when we say, because dissatisfied romantic partners should be more likely to use negative maintenance behaviors. And again, that's something that is out there already. You see the citation. And such behaviors have the potential to harm the relationship and may be reactions to problems in the relationship. The following hypothesis is offered. So what they're saying is, here's something we know. Dissatisfied partners use negative maintenance behaviors. Negative maintenance behaviors harm the relationships, and they might be a reaction to problems in a relationship. So here's what we think based on those things. And the conclusion that they think or that they're proposing is the hypothesis. We see more linkage and transition to linkage here, a different set of variables, the love styles that we were talking about earlier. So we see Fricker and Moore. By the way, this is missing a date. It should be Fricker and Moore, parenthesis date. Revealed that relationship satisfaction was associated positively with love styles, but negatively with Ludus love styles. Relational quality and love styles are interdependent. They are related. We're saying relationship satisfaction has a relationship with whatever love style it is that you use in a relationship. They are related. So that is, love styles may not account for unique variance beyond relational satisfaction, commitment, control, mutuality, liking, and respect as examined. That justifies the hypothesis that will follow. So what we're seeing here is an actual argument being advanced that then merits a hypothesis that should be investigated. I very much hope that this little short video has helped you as far as what goes into your literature review, how to organize it, and examples of specific parts that you may not be familiar with yet. Also, I posted up a few really good examples of quality, well-organized, linked literature reviews for you to use on the website. So take a look at that. Have a great day.